Hey, it's Jaylen Bledsoe, and frequently, Dave Ramsey has been under hot water on Threads. This is a reoccurring conversation at this point. The complaint is that much of his commentary, his lessons, are out of touch. And I would add, this is the case for many of the financial gurus on the internet, either out of touch or completely wrong. It's either get out of debt by spending less or get a tax break by buying a G-Wagon. The internet has created two opposite versions of financial advice. One tells you every problem can be solved by spending less. The other tells you every problem can be solved with some tax hack, investment scheme, or side hustle. Both can contain truth, but neither by themselves is a financial plan. Reminds me a lot of the pandemic with the Forex movement. Everyone was just chasing this greatest, best opportunity to make a ton of money really quickly with fundamental financial ideas, but ultimately just a multi-level marketing scheme. Now, there are those who actually understand the underlying principles of finances, taxes, investments, economics, and could sit with you and create a practical plan if you knew them one-on-one, and that plan would actually work. One of these folks is actually my good friend, Anthony O'Neill, who is the real deal. His book actually just released, Stop Living Paycheck to Paycheck, which you should check out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever you get your books, and support him. I'm sure he would appreciate it, and I would too. Now, I think Dave Ramsey gets one or many things fundamentally right. You cannot sustainably spend more than you make. The premise of it all is to spend less than you make in any given season. So as they oversimplify financial advice on the internet with some things that are materially inaccurate or don't apply to most situations, I'm going to have a little conversation of my own. I think first we have to understand the problem. We often diagnose them as a spending problem. Yes. Sometimes it can be a spending problem. Sometimes it can be a debt problem. Sometimes you can have an income problem. Sometimes it's a liquidity problem. So first you need to do an honest assessment of where you're at. What is your income? And for this exercise, I really want you to think about what actually hits your account, your take-home income. What are the expenses each month? There are the fixed commitments, the rents, the mortgage, the car payments, insurance, minimum debt payments, all the things. There are the variable necessities, groceries, utilities, gas, transportation. And then there are discretionary expenses, restaurants, shopping, travel, subscriptions, entertainment. Then let's identify the entirety of your debts. Home, car, title loans, personal loans. This feels like the moment where they just drag out, but credit card loans, airplane loans, money owed to your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your friends, your neighbors. Now, for each one, what is the balance? What was the original balance? What was the original length? What is the interest rate? What is the monthly payment? How much longer will this payment exist if we do nothing differently? And honesty with yourself in this exercise matters. I've spent most of this year building a home, and that means I'm preparing to apply for a mortgage for that home and to close on it. And at some point in the budgeting process, I told myself that my monthly miscellaneous, inclusive of food, budget category was only $1,000 a month. Then I told myself it was $1,500. And when I really looked at it, looking at the numbers on paper, it was more than $2,000. Now, the numbers, the budget, the actual cash flow don't care about what you thought. It cares about what actually happened. And here you'll get a sense of your monthly financial plan, your monthly cash flow margin, or what I would call your margin. Your take-home income minus your monthly spending and commitments equal that margin. The goal is to create positive cash flow and then create or expand that margin. And then we'll go to diagnosing the actual problem. For some, the reality may be that you make less than you spend regularly. For some, this could be because of poor financial planning, poor decision making, a big mistake you made a few years ago and you're dealing with it now. For others, and for many, it's that, and primarily on top of, it's because of life. Income hasn't grown with the non-discretionary expenses. Income was lost, rent increased, insurance increased, food increased. Both personal responsibility and economic reality can be true at the same time. This macroeconomy has impacted my microeconomy, and my microeconomy is not caught up to the macro. And that would be played out in inflation. From December 2019 to December 2025, consumer prices increased approximately, not 10, not 15, not 20, not 25, but 26% based on the Consumer Price Index. Had prices increased at a simple 2% annual benchmark over that same 6-year period, cumulative inflation would have only been 12.6%. Now, what does that mean? Ground beef, 1 pound of ground beef in December 2019, I don't eat ground beef, but it was a good example, was only $3.86. In December 2025, that same 1 pound of ground beef was $6.69. That is a 73% increase. Rent on its own itself has increased, according to CPI, about 31%. That means in December 2019, if your rent was $1,500, according to this index, it's increased to $1,900.63. So overall inflation over 6 years, 26%. Rent, 31%. Ground beef, 73%. Now, wages have increased during this period too. So I'm not suggesting that income across the board has stayed flat over this time period, but has your income actually kept pace with the things you actually have to buy? Your rent, your groceries, your insurance, your transportation, your childcare, your actual cost of living? Has your personal income increased 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 73% over that time like ground beef has? Now, what is the problem? Do you have a spending problem? You may make enough money, but your discretionary spending is consuming your margin. Is it an income problem? Your reasonable expenses are consuming most or all of your income. Is it a balance sheet problem? You make decent money, but previous decisions have created too many monthly obligations, car payments, credit cards, personal loans, buy now, pay later, Affirm, Klarna, Afterpay, all the places. Or is it a liquidity problem? You actually make enough money, you have enough assets, but if something were to happen in your life, do you have enough accessible cash to manage that? The car breaks, air conditioner goes out, medical expense, lose a job, suddenly have a new expense that becomes a debt or something. And for some people, the answer for you may be one, or it may be all four, or somewhere in between. So what must we do? How do we resolve this? And this is where we must create or expand that margin. We must create positive cash flow, creating or expanding the margin we have today. And luckily, there are a few layers, a few levers, a few things that we can do. So number one, that is reducing our expenses. So yes, let's look at where we are and what expenses we can cut on a monthly basis. These may not be immediate cuts that we can make today or tomorrow. It could be planning out for the next apartment renewal to downsize and find something cheaper. Are there debts that we can remove? Can we sell the car that we don't need? And if there's equity in it, can we use that to maybe buy a cheaper car in cash or significantly reduce the car note that we're making monthly? Can we avoid the expenses and purchases we don't need to minimize the creation of new debt or anything that can minimize our cash flow during this period? And then there might be longer term goals here. Maybe the goal is over the next 12 months, I want to create $1,000 in my free cash flow by reducing my monthly expenses by $1,000. That may not happen tomorrow, but there should be a plan. Number two, which is one I think we often forget about, is we have to focus on income, the top line. You have to increase your top line as much as you decrease your bottom line. Businesses don't respond to every margin problem by endlessly cutting expenses. At some point, there is nothing meaningful left to cut. They have to increase revenue. We have to think about this the same way in our personal lives. Is there a promotion or a raise that we can go after at our current company? If not, it may be time to apply for another job at another company. I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes the best raise comes from someplace outside of your current employer. And sometimes you may go out to get the 30% just to come back to your current employer in a few years for another 15, 20, or 30%. It may be getting a 6 to 10 after your 9 to 5. Looking at getting a 6 to 10 after 9 to 5, this may be difficult with timing, but it is necessary. It may be necessary for your situation. It may be something that's done to quickly get rid of a debt or a commitment or something you hold on to until you can get your single source of income to increase and make up that difference. I'm not saying everybody should work 16 hours a day forever, But there may be a season where extraordinary effort can permanently change your plan, your future, your reality as you move forward. That 6 to 10 may be a part-time role elsewhere, or consulting, independent contracting, or exploring entrepreneurship, monetizing a skill that you have with the time that you have available after work. Then it's looking at the balance sheet. Are there assets, even if depreciating, that we can sell to resolve a debt? It might be the same thing that was purchased that created that debt. The purse, the car, the equipment, that laptop or the camera that you don't need. I'm not saying sell assets just to create cash that you turn around and spend, but if selling something materially improves your balance sheet or your monthly cash flow, it may make sense. Even if you have to buy it again later once you have more cash flow and more savings to justify it. Resolving your finances is not just an expense problem. It's about the commitment and discipline to put in the extra work to resolve it. And lastly, protect the floor. This is the liquidity part, the reality of having emergency needs. And I know it's easier to say than do. If your necessary expenses are $5,000 a month, saying you need $30,000 in your savings account can sound a little crazy and far-fetched, especially when you're figuring out how to save or generate an extra free $1,000 a month. So what I believe is the end goal should be 6 months of your necessary expenses. Not 6 months of your salary, but 6 months of the expenses that you have to cover every month. Not the luxuries, the necessities. Because here's the reality. In this job market, if you lose your job on Friday, I don't believe it is reality or practical that you'll have a job in the next week or two. Now, I'm not saying you won't. You could. But right now, the job market is difficult. And it would be of great intelligence, of great planning, of great forethought to plan to be out of a job for a few months. So saving for that delta of time until we can replace that income with new income. So work towards 6 months, but make every month a milestone. Get 1 month of expenses saved, and that's a win. Then you get 2 months of expenses saved, and that's a win. Then 3, then 4, and 5, then eventually 6 months. Don't allow the size of the final goal to stop you from reaching the first milestone. And this is important because without liquidity, the next emergency can undo all the work we just did. You pay down the credit card, and then the transmission goes out. And if you don't have the cash, we're going right back to a credit card. Emergency reserves can create margin too, not necessarily because they create margin in our monthly budget, but margin for life to happen because life will life without our input at the end of the day. And I said lastly, but I think this is important too. I believe you should continue to invest in your future with savings and investments while tackling debt and creating this free cash flow. I would be very reluctant to miss out on the 401k match your company offers by not contributing something to it. You're paying yourself for when you're 50 or 60 or 70 and retired. If your employer is offering you money for contributing to retirement, that's compensation you do not want to leave on the table that you would be if you're not putting money into it. Now, high interest debt versus low interest debt is its own conversation. Emergency savings versus investing. How much to invest while paying down debt, another conversation. There's plenty of conversations to be had. Now, the goal of this conversation was not to do a financial lesson. It was really just to communicate what we must simply understand in navigating our budgets to create free cash flow, navigating our lives to create that margin so that we're not stuck in debt if that's our reality, or so that we can live a prosperous life if that's the goal that we're going after. I'm looking forward to having more conversations if we so choose to do this. But thank you for listening. Subscribe or let me know in the comments what your thoughts were, and I look forward to doing more of it with you.